Thank you for joining us for another episode of Flipping the Pages. I am thrilled to introduce Heidi Chiavaroli, who I've connected with many times over my library career, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you here. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, Joselyn. Thank you.
Heidi is a Swansea resident and the author of quite a few books. Do you want to talk about some of the books that you've written or the genres you write?
Yeah, sure. So I've been kind of a little bit all over the place. This is my 14th book that just released.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's right here, by the way.
Yeah. So I have a lot of dual timeline novels. So these are novels where there's a contemporary story told alongside a historical story with a point of connection between. And so I dove into the American Revolution a lot, and my first books, I have one that's based in Swansea. The historical portion is based on the legend of Abram's Rock, right behind the Swansea Library. That's one of my favorites. But there is a contemporary story too, so kind of going back and forth and tying them together. It's a lot of fun. I have a series also that's just straight contemporary, a little lighter than some of my dual timeline reads.
No, that sounds fun. I love that. I love historical fiction. That's one of my favorite genres. So I like that connection of the past to the present.
Yes.
I think that's really great and fun to explore.
Yeah.
So what got you into writing in the first place? Tell us about that.
When I was little, I always loved to write. My first book I wrote was in 3rd grade called I'd Cross the Desert for Milk. Kind of pitiful when I look at it now. I'm like, oh. But you know, I love
great for 8.
Yes. I love to write. As I got to, I think, late middle school, early high school, I was like, this really isn't practical to want to be a writer. Like, that's an author, you know? And I turned to the sciences, and I went to college. I did really well in school. I got a scholarship. I ended up dropping out of college September 2001. You know, the country was reeling from 9/11. My parents were going to get a divorce, and they decided they were going to work things out. I just wanted to be home. I missed my high school sweetheart, who's now my husband. So I ended up quitting college. 5 years later, I was married to my high school sweetheart with 2 young boys, and that's when I decided, you know, I'm going to revisit this writing thing. I fell in love with reading again, and I'm like, I'm going to give this a shot. So, yeah, it was a long journey, you know, a lot of rejections. It wasn't, I think I was working on my writing for 11 years before I finally got a contract.
Oh, wow.
So 6 manuscripts in 11 years.
Wow.
So I don't have a degree in writing, but I feel like I definitely put in the hours. If you count the hours, I must have a master's degree or something.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So what does a typical writing day look like for you? Like, how do you approach your process?
Yeah. They often look different depending on what I have going on, like if I'm promoting or if I'm on a deadline. Usually I'll get up and start my day with a walk or a run, get those creative juices flowing. A lot of the times my writing ideas come when I'm like not actually sitting in front of the computer. So I feel like it's really important for me to be like outside and just kind of thinking about things. And then I have to do, communications, emails, social media, all that stuff that is not, super fun for me, but it's a necessity. And then usually in the afternoons, I'll do, if I have to research or write, if I have a deadline, I'll figure out how many words I need to write per week. And then I'll try to break that up per day and try to go by that and just, to make sure I get it done and leave enough time for editing and my critique partners to read everything. Wow. And yeah, it's fun.
That's great. Do you have any process you do when you feel stuck? Like, you must have like the urge to procrastinate, or like when a deadline comes, like so many of us kind of like have a moment where we're like, oh my gosh, what?
Yes, actually there was a moment this past winter that I got really overwhelmed. I had a couple of deadlines and I was like, I just kind of want to give it all back. But can't do that.
Too far in, yeah.
I had to do a lot of breathing, a lot of hiking in the woods, a lot of praying. And sometimes I just need to step back from it, even though it feels counterintuitive, like I have a deadline, I need to get going on it. Sometimes for me, I just need to step back and get some perspective. And then I can be like, okay, you can do this. This is your job, and you've done it before, and you're going to do it again. And, just kind of sit down. And usually if I sit down and just make myself write, a paragraph, I can get back into it pretty easily. It's more the sitting, wondering, not writing that makes me,
The anxiety.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
Pretty good. I wrote down a few questions. I didn't want to forget anything. Do you have a favorite genre to write? Are you how do you choose between the timeline, historical fiction, and then your contemporary?
Yeah. So usually for the historical, it will be something that comes to me if I'm researching or if I was even out like with my kids, maybe on the Freedom Trail or something. I'll have a tidbit that will just come to me and it's like won't let me go. I remember discovering about the leper colony off the coast of Massachusetts and the Elizabeth Islands on Penakees Island in the early 20th century, discovering that there was a leper colony there. I'm like, just a little over 100 years ago, and just being fascinated by that and wanting to research everything. And then as I'm researching, characters kind of come to my mind, and I just want to be in that world. So a lot of times it's here and there. When COVID happened, I felt like I wanted to lighten things up a little bit, so that's when I turned to some of the lighter contemporary stories that are in my series. That's a contemporary twist on Little Women. So that was really light and fun, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, that does sound like fun.
Yeah. So it's kind of, they say that as an author, you're supposed to really stick with one genre, and that's how you really can grow your readership. So I'm kind of breaking the rules a little bit when I go here and there. But for me, I feel like the creativity is so important that I need to kind of put that first, because I'll just be dry and I won't be excited about it. So
it does seem like you have a following as well. Like you have a dedicated readership base.
Yeah.
How much do you try to connect with them?
Yeah, they're so sweet.
Or how do you do it?
I am so appreciative for any readers who have read my book. And it's true, I have some who will read, no matter what I write, they'll read it, no matter what genre it is. And I'm so, so grateful for them. I like to connect primarily through my newsletter, social media. I will connect as much as I can. I do events as I can, and that's my favorite, to actually have a reader in front of me and talk to them, and and they'll share with me how the story impacted them. I'm like, that's so cool.
I remember I think it was during COVID, and we did a virtual author talk with you.
Yes, that's right.
And I remember the buzz around that talk for people, and you had a far reach that people just loved you. And because it was virtual, they were able to connect.
Yes.
It was eye-opening to me. And it was really cool to see that.
Yeah, it's definitely after COVID especially, there's been more, interviews and stuff virtually, which can reach a farther, farther place, which is fun too. Yeah.
So on that, kind of piggybacking off of that, how much travel do you have to build in? You mentioned publicity, and it sounds like that's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
So tell us about that and the travel that might be involved.
So at first, when I first was published, I did a lot more travel than I do now. Not far places, St. Louis, I would go to conferences, I would speak, some places down south, Virginia, or I would go up to New England and help run retreats for women, speaking and all of that. And now I find it a little overwhelming to travel a lot. I will do it once in a while, but now that my kids are older, I'm hoping I can take my husband along. Yeah. And then that'll be funner because, you know, instead of traveling by myself, I wasn't really a fan of traveling by myself.
Oh, wow.
It's my introverted writer side, I guess.
No, I can appreciate that too. It's hard to be the one in the spotlight. Yeah. Do you have a favorite author?
I think probably my favorite author is Kristen Hanna. I know everybody loves her.
Yeah,
she just writes with she just puts you right there. Her latest, The Women, is fantastic. I love all her books, but she's probably my favorite.
And she's someone too who's kind of crossed genres, actually.
That's true. Yes.
From how she started and what she's writing now.
That's right. She started more contemporary. I think she did some dual timeline, and now she's like more in the historical. And I just enjoy everything she writes.
Oh, that's great. And do you have a favorite genre to read?
I'm kind of all over. I'll read a lot of historical, but I will read some contemporary too. I'm reading Leanne Moriarty right now. She writes contemporary and she's fun. Just love her voice. But I don't really stick to anything. Usually if I see a book getting recommended a lot, it'll draw my attention, and I just want good writing and good plot and characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a particular part of the story that what drives you? Is it the plot or the character? Are you more?
Yeah, I think it's something about the author's voice, when they have a unique way of telling a story, and it just keeps your attention. I swear Leanne Moriarty could talk about on a boring thing and I would be reading it, and yet she tells it in such a way that I am there and I want to turn the page. I don't know. She has a gift. So it's the author's voice, I think.
Okay. And we've alluded to your new book, your latest project. Can you tell us about The Way Back?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. So The Way Back is about a young woman named Lainey whose mother has just written a best-selling memoir. So it's getting a lot of attention nationally. And the memoir kind of dives into some of the sordid family history that Lainey has not known about. And it also explores a personal tragedy that Lainey had during her own teenage years. And so Lainey thought she was healing, and then all of this publicity is happening, and she's really, the anxiety's coming. So she flies across the country to find her grandmother that she's never met. And she finds her grandmother at her seaside inn, which contains a lighthouse in the coast of Maine. And she is surprised that her grandmother is nothing like her mother portrayed in the memoir. So she gets to work trying to find out what really happened all of those years ago. And she discovers the journal of a young lighthouse keeper named Abby Burgess. And Abby, as she's reading this journal, Abby is she's lived over 100 years ago, but she's kind of illuminating some of what's happening in Lainey's life, talking about, what does it mean to forgive? What does it mean to just be in relationship with people when you are not seeing things the same way? You might be standing on entirely different truths. And, what it might mean for Lainey to open herself up again to romantic love. And so she's doing all this, and she's, hopefully finding what is going to happen, what happened all those years ago between her mother and her grandmother.
What was the inspiration for this?
Yeah, this came in several different directions from several different places. Part of it at the beginning, Lainey and her best friend are jumping off a seaside cliff. And that was an inspiration from my sister, who told me when she was a teenager, she foolishly was jumping off part of the Newport Cliff, with a bunch of boys. There's signs everywhere, no swimming. Yeah. It's really dangerous. So I was a rule follower. I was very mortified by this. And I'm like, what if something happens? So that was kind of the inspiration to the start of the story. I was playing around with a game called Storymatic, and I came upon a card that said family members' memoirs on the bestseller list. And I was like, that is a great story, and I want to incorporate that. The idea of Abby actually came from a sweet reader who wrote me an email about an interesting historical female lighthouse keeper who was, running a lighthouse in the 1850s, 1860s on the coast of Maine. And she sent me a detail that I won't go into it because it's kind of part of the book, but it was like, I need to write about that.
Oh, wow.
So that was cool. That was Diana Grady, and I'm really thankful for her.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So fun.
Let me see. Are you working on anything now? Or
Yes. Always have things in my mind. I have a September deadline, though, for a Lenten meditation series. So this is going to be 40 shorter fictional stories. So this is a little bit something I haven't ever done before, but I'm excited about it. So that's due in September. And then I'm thinking of the next book in this series, which I have partly written.
Oh, wow.
So I hope to have some time in the fall after this deadline's done to get that done.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's also another interesting concept of shorter stories. How has that change been for you?
Yeah, I really liked it. At first I wasn't sure because you have 90,000 words to write a novel, and then these shorter stories are about 1,500 words. So you have a lot to fit in, but in the emotional impact and all of that, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm liking kind of getting right to the point and really digging into the characters. Like there's no time to waste. You have to get there.
So you mentioned a fall deadline. Once you make your deadline, what happens to that book now?
Yes. Oh, good question. Yeah. So my editor at my publishing house will read it and get back with me, and probably with other editors as well, but then she'll get back to me with what's called developmental edits. So that might be the big picture things, like if there's bigger things that need to be addressed. So I will edit that, give it back to her, and then they'll have their group read it again and make sure that I addressed any issues that they were concerned about. And then that will be when the line edits come in. So more the nitty-gritty, grammatical, line by line edits. Then they'll give it back to me and I'll fix things. They'll read it again. Everybody will start getting sick of the story since we've read it so many times. And then they'll start preparing marketing, come up with a cover for it, a marketing plan, where they're going to, try to put the book and what reviewers they'll give it to. And they'll come back to me with the marketing team and, ask me to do certain things, or I might have ideas. And then we'll come. So this book that's a September deadline, it's not coming out till January 2026. So we have a little bit of time. Yeah.
How much of a say do you have in the marketing? Like they come up with the plan first. Do you get to say, I don't like that?
Sure. That's
and do
a
they
good
listen?
Question. Right. Yes. So when I give the proposal, I have marketing points that I say that I think are a good idea and that I'm willing to do. So a lot of times they'll take those. I have never had a publisher ask me to do anything unreasonable or that I've been uncomfortable with. If I did, I would say so, and I think they would be respectful of that. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's such a big part of things that I know so many authors have to take on themselves.
Right, yes.
And I just don't know how that works. None of us really know on this side how that works.
Big publishers who have a marketing reach want to see their authors out there trying to let people know about their books.
Right.
And it's tough because a lot of authors, myself included, we didn't get into this to put ourselves out there. We wanted to just put our little thoughts in our writing.
Right.
So it can be a little bit of a struggle but you want people to also know about your book, and they're not going to. There's so many books in the world. They're not going to know about your little book unless you, do what you have to do.
Right.
So, yeah.
So we've talked a lot about everything, your process and background. Is there any advice you've been given along the way that that hit you so that you can keep going?
Yes. Well, in the beginning, when I was tempted to give up because I was getting rejections and a lot of bad contest scores, someone told me that writing could be learned, and this was a person that was far on the journey. And that really impacted me because I was thinking, okay, I might not have all this incredible talent, but I know how to learn. I know that, if I can do this. So then that kind of helped me persevere a bit. And, when I'm still getting rejections and I've written, 5 manuscripts, it's like I've come this far, just going to keep going and see what's going to happen,
Oh, wow. That is great advice.
Yeah.
Because it can be applied to like everything we ever do.
Absolutely. We have a great capacity, I think, to learn, and, we just have to, do it.
I just want to step back a moment. You mentioned contest score. What is that? Can you explain that?
So at the beginning of my publishing journey, when I was just writing, when my kids were taking their naps, I entered a contest for unpublished writers.
Oh.
And so these are great because a lot of times they'll give you feedback, and not just a contest score, although they'll give you that. They'll give you advice on how to improve and what you did well, what you need to work on. So it's kind of tough because, most writers think what they're writing is pretty good. we can't tell, we don't have that eye. And then for somebody to tell you, oh, I got bad grades on those contest scores, like low grades, and that was tough. So I put aside my writing thinking I don't have any talent, and then that's when that advice came to me.
Oh,
and I was
that's
like,
so important.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, how do you handle the criticism or the rejection, even at this point where you have had some success?
Exactly, because there's still bad reviews. There's still, things that you have to deal with. So some authors don't read their reviews. I like to, because I want to see how the books are impacting people and hitting them, and if they're enjoying them or not. But I will get a bad review every now and then. And sometimes, I admit, I can take it a little hard because it feels very personal.
Right.
Like it's your creative work and you want people to enjoy it. And yet reading is very subjective. Not everybody is going to enjoy everything that you've written. And so in those times, I just have to step back and say, okay, my book was not for that person, and that's okay. It's for these other people who are really enjoying it. It's meaningful to them, and that's who I'm writing for. And that helps me kind of move past it and keep going. Yeah.
So it sounds like you would have a lot of good advice to give to new and aspiring writers. Is there one thing that you can?
Yeah. I think just going back to that, writing can be learned, and that if you are willing to persevere and not give up and read a lot. And, there's so many paths to publishing now. There's independent publishing. You can publish things yourself. I would advise making sure that you're putting out a quality work. But, it's just because an agent or a publisher says no doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have what it takes and that some reader out there won't be blessed by your writing, So I would say keep going if it's on your heart to do it. Yeah.
That sounds good. I just love this question because it just, I don't know, it makes you think in a different way about what you're doing. Is there any question you wish you would be asked that you haven't been asked?
Ooh, I don't know about that one. That's a good question. I guess why I do what I do. I guess that would be a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah. So when I started rediscovering my love for reading, a lot of what I was reading was hitting me because it was speaking to some of the brokenness of my own heart. And I think good stories can, give us hope and give us that message. A lot of what I was reading was inspirational fiction. My faith is very important to me, and so that is what I write as well. And a lot of the readers that read my stories, they connect with that aspect of my stories. And so I think that's a big part of why I write, because I'm not just trying to entertain readers, although I hope that they will enjoy my stories, but I'm trying in some way to speak to the broken parts of our hearts and my own as I write it, because a lot of times there'll be a need in me that I don't even know about, and these characters will come out and help me along, and I love that. That's the power of story.
So
it's
inspiring.
Cool.
That's
so
great.
Cool.
Where can we find your books, and where can we follow you, or do you want to plug a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I have a website, HeidiChiavaroli.com, if you can spell Chiavaroli. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. You can find my books. I have some of them at Willow Tree Country Shop in Swansea. And then they're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, Google Play. They're just about everywhere online. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for
Joselyn.
joining us. This was so much fun.
This has been great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Flipping the Pages with us.